Welcome to the Dr. Dad's podcast, where a naturopath and chiropractor come together each week to share lifestyle medicine, health advice, and inspiring interviews with some of the top experts in health and wellness, bringing you the latest in nutrition, exercise, ancient healing, toxins and detox, your microbiome, mindset, hormones, brain, and much more. Stay tuned. We're going to teach you how to experience growth daily.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Dad's podcast. I'm here with my main man, my brother from down under, sort of, in the south of Texas. Actually,
south, buddy.
And our guest is from the south, too. How's everything going today, David?
It's good, man. We're busy. I got a new toy this week.
I saw that, the biocharger.
I got a biocharger.
It's badass, man.
It's been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, well, we have a biocharger, what do I want to say, like a rep that keeps calling our clinic. And I think they're really exploding, you know, in different parts of North America right now.
It's awesome, man. I've been wanting one for like 2 years. I saw one at the biohacking conference in Beverly Hills, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I had heard about them before that, got to sit down and actually experience it. And I looked at Clarissa and I was like, we have to have this. And she's like, we don't have any room in the clinic. And so I waited a couple of years and then I told her, I was like, we're going to make room. So we moved some stuff around the clinic and made space. And yeah, man, I'm super pumped.
So that's a good, where are you actually putting it? Are you putting it in like a lounge area so that, are people paying for that service, or is it just something in the clinic?
So it'll be, people have to pay for it. So like, I took one of my adjusting areas where I have a table and all my stuff, and we completely removed one of them. So I have 2 instead of 3 adjusting areas. And then that area is becoming like the biocharger lounge area. So we'll have like a coffee table, 4 chairs. People can it'll be included in their treatment for certain treatment plans. Other ones, they can buy a charge card. So like it's like a punch card. So when you come in, you can go sit by the biocharger and then you just punch your card. Or you can just pay per treatment. But it's awesome, man. The thing, you can run over like 1,200 recipes on this thing. Mm-hmm. And everything from pain, inflammation to, you can get into like 528 solfeggio tones. They have rife frequencies on there. You can do nitro, you can do things for energy, you can do things for the immune system, you can do things for the fascia to stretch. I mean, almost anything, man. It's like a frequency Rolodex. It's pretty awesome.
Well, it's cool. We kind of started the conversation with that because it's all about helping to optimize the aging body, right? And right. What you can do to take control and reverse or reprogram the way that your DNA is expressing through these epigenetic signals, right? So, and that's a lot of that is a topic of the conversation today. So we've got a return guest, which doesn't happen super often, but sometimes we meet some of these amazing people, and a co-dad who is doing some amazing things in the world. So our guest again is Chris Burres, and he was the owner of the company called MyVitalC. And he's recently released his book, which looks amazing. And I'm excited to hear that he also did a recording so I can hear his beautiful voice on Audible. And it's called Live Longer and Better. And on top of that, he's actually launching a summit. And so he's got a chance to interview some of the top experts in the field, from Dave Asprey to Ben Greenfield to Stephen Gundry to Dr. Tom O'Brien. I mean, so many amazing guests, and no doubt his brain is full of information. So he's just going to kind of explode on this podcast with all the stuff that he got himself into. So Chris, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast again today.
Nick, David, thank you so much for having me. By the way, the biocharger, that's like the Tesla coil thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw it. I didn't get to experience it. The first biohacking conference that I went to, and by the way, I feel remiss that it took me so long to go to one, was, I don't know, back in May, I guess, Dave Asprey's biohacking conference. Mm-hmm. And we're, just to share, one of the things I love about biohackers. So we have these little ampules with our product. If you kind of just imagine a plastic ampule, you would hand this to a biohacker. They would open it. They would start taking it and go, "What is this?"
Ask questions later, right?
Right. It's just such an adventurous group. And I feel like I'm in such a different place because I think the last time we got together if you were talking about kind of epigenetic changes, you were talking about, biochargers and all of this biohacking stuff. I didn't even really have a frame of reference. My frame of reference was this ESS60 molecule, and take it, people, or in this case, test subjects, Wistar rats, live longer. And that's why we're having a conversation. I'm so much further evolved. And that's extremely exciting. And I really do believe that anytime you're evolving, you should be sharing that information, which is why I wrote the book, which is why I ultimately did the Longevity Summit. So again, thank you so much for having me back.
I gotta say, Chris, you actually do look younger than the last time we spoke. New glasses, maybe. You got this sense of purpose and vitality that's obviously in every single cell of your body. That's just, like you said, you're exploding with information, no doubt, everything you learn. So that's cool. You know what? I guess I'm a little surprised. I thought that you were in the world of biohacking, and just digging deep, even the last time we spoke. I mean, based on how we talked, you fooled me anyways.
I feel like I had done a pretty good job of touching a lot of the surfaces, right? And it was really driven by the product, right? So the test subjects, in this case, Wistar rats, let's kind of, go back to that and cover it real quick, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm holding up a model of a molecule. If you're listening, just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. You have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. That molecule was discovered here in Houston at Rice University. That's where we're based. It was discovered in 1985. The three scientists who discovered it won the Nobel Prize in 1996 for that discovery. The molecule is amazing. It makes for industrial applications. So it makes better inks, better tires, better batteries, better photocells. And this is often where people are like, wait, I thought we were talking about a health supplement and you just said batteries. And literally there's been no point in my life where I've looked at a car battery and thought, what components of that battery should I be consuming on a daily basis, right? So that can be a little nerve-wracking. Even worse, potentially, is scientists, because of the shape on the exterior of the soccer ball molecule, we call it ESS60, the scientists assumed that it would be toxic. They put it in this toxicity study. My lab actually provided the material were mentioned in that original peer-reviewed published paper. But instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, again, Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. So that really shot me down this path of, is a 90% extension of life even a real big deal? Like, I've never gone to a GNC and saw anything that said it doubled your life or even added 10%. So I still had no frame of reference. So I think what I understood and was able to share last time was really driven out of, okay, where does this product sit in the scope of things, right? And by the way, then the next best way to live longer is calorie restriction. If you reduce your calorie consumption by 30%, it's well documented in multiple animal models that you can extend your life by 30%. No one signs up for the starve yourself 1/3 to death diet. They just need better marketing or something. So I go down the path of, okay, this is longevity. What else is there about longevity? Our most consistent testimonials, people take it in the morning. They report mental focus and energy during the day and then better sleep at night. So I pick up Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. On the longevity perspective, I'm picking up Dr. David Sinclair's book, Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. Which, by the way, I wish the Why We Sleep book had a similar tagline, like why we sleep and why we don't have to. That would be nice, like to just get an extra 8 hours a day. But that so I feel like I had touched a lot of the surface, so I could hang with you guys. But as soon as you started getting into more details, I'd be like, I don't know what a biocharger is and what it looks like, and it sounds Tesla coil. That sounds dangerous. So yeah, I feel like I'm in a much better place, and that's exciting.
Yeah, what a journey though, because it really took the experience that you had with your company and all the amazing research that's been done around longevity, looking at again genetic expression and detoxification, all these things that are going to environmentally impact or speed up the aging process. So the book came as a result of your journey, and so yeah, live longer and better. So like what drives you inside, like, maybe emotionally, Like, I'm curious to hear about the dad side of you that really wants to know how to do this in a more meaningful way for yourself. Because I think, at some point, maybe in our 40s or something, we start to go like, geez, my parents are getting older. I've got my kids are growing up. I miss those early days. And I'm here in my 40s, and I'm thinking about this next half of my life in a more, interesting and meaningful kind of way. So I'm curious about that sort of side of the journey for your legacy and why you wrote the book.
Yeah, I think you should be considering the next 2/3 of your life, right? Because it's really interesting. I believe that we're in this quantum shift about what the medical community thinks about longevity, right? And you look at no further than Dr. David Sinclair's book, 25 years of a Harvard researcher addressing aging in different animal models to kind of prove that what he started in yeast, and you're like, oh, yay, yeast study, but the mechanisms are translating into mice, and in whatever other animal models that he's visiting. So I really do think we're in this kind of quantum shift, longevity revolution, I like to call it. What drives me, and this is all in the book. I've got to be honest. The first thing that drove me is not as altruistic as one would hope. When I was 14, I had a Lamborghini Countach, a bright red, on my wall. The doors were open, and I was like, I want one of those. And this is way pre-internet, and so how do you figure out how to get one? Which is kind of challenging, right? Today, you just Google it, and then you weed through all the guys who are leaning against their Lamborghini telling you how to get one. And you got to find the results. By the way, as I was researching for the book, it really is the same two things. I think it was probably in a Car and Driver magazine, how do you get a Lamborghini? And it said, if you want one Lamborghini, you become a neurosurgeon. And if you want more than one, you become an entrepreneur. I'm a 14-year-old kid. Like, more than one of those things on my wall sounds really good. So that really kind of cemented in my mind that I was going to be an entrepreneur. And then, again, the stories in the book. Okay, well, what does a future entrepreneur study back, so long ago? So that was back in '89. And the reality is, at that time, there were only 2 entrepreneurship courses, not a whole series, not a school of entrepreneurship, just 2 courses in the country. And I don't even think I would have gone down that path, because my idea was, how do I get to a job that has the highest salary so I could have money to invest in a company? So I'm good in science, I'm good in math, so I studied mechanical engineering. Engineering is one of the fastest ways to the highest salaries in going through college. So I did that, and a couple things went wrong with that plan. One, it turned out not to be 4 years. Engineering is a very tough discipline. I did end up graduating with a mechanical engineering degree, minors in computer science and math. But I also met my business partner, and we started the company while we were still in college. So kind of messed up the whole go get a high salary and invest in a company. And I think what makes me so happy to do, one, obviously that is a parallel path to what is actually going on in my life. I've always been extremely interested in delivering value to people. Like, it's just from way back when. And in the book, I kind of talk about where I think that might have come from, which is some of it, obviously parents, right? Parental influence, but some of it is moving every 2 years. And, my dad was in the Air Force. And so we literally moved every 2 years. And every 2 years, I only knew 3 other people on the planet: my mom, my dad, and my brother. And you had a really short period of time to make best friends again. And that, I think what worked best for me was just a lot of compassion, right? A lot of compassion for people, a lot of understanding, and always trying to help. And that's just the thing that has carried through to this point. So, imagine where my life is today, pre-summit and even pre-book. I deliver a supplement that I didn't really design. I'm not some genius who went back in some lab and said, this is what's going to knock people's socks off in the best possible way. No, I've been manufacturing this ESS60 molecule since 1991. They thought it would be toxic. They put it in a toxicity study. It actually doubled the lives of the test subjects. And now I'm in this space. So now I go and educate people on the study and then figure out where I sit in longevity. And as a company, we take phone calls of people with just amazing testimonials. Like nothing, I couldn't be happier. As you kind of pointed out, I'm jazzed to come to work every day. And just to share, there's a number of biological age tests out there. Glycan age is one of them, and I took this. Actually, I took it at the biohacking conference in Orlando. And I'll be honest, like when we go to these conferences, we have a really good time, and I might have been slightly hungover. And as I'm dripping the blood onto the little card, I'm thinking, this is probably not the best time to take this biological test, right? And by the way, we have lots of testimonials. I got a really strong one this week about hangovers and not having them, but with our product. But that glycan age test showed me biologically to be 33 years younger than my actual age. So listed me at 21. Now, that test is significantly about inflammation. And, you guys know, inflammation, not good. The biocharger addresses inflammation, works to address inflammation. Probably, you said 1,200 settings. There's probably 1,000 of them are related to inflammation in some way, if not all 1,200. So yeah, I'm actually younger. According to another test, my DN age, when I first took it, I was 51, and it showed me to be, I think it was 59. I took it recently, actually in preparation for the summit. So now 3 years later, so I'm 54 now, and it showed me to be 58. So I'm not happy that the age is older than my actual chronological age, but it's definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
So, buddy, I'm curious, Chris. We talked last time. You're going to get to the testimonials, but we're talking about all these things. You've jumped into longevity. You're starting to move towards. I mean, this is a big aspect. Detox is a big aspect of longevity, right? Last time we talked about some of these benefits you were seeing. People were having better energy. I think sleep was another one. Less pain, inflammation, all these things. What kind of cool stuff have you seen since we last chatted? That's kind of come forward. That you're seeing big results from.
In reality, we continue to get more of the same, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think when we met, there was a theory that we were working on, really hadn't kind of cemented it in place. And so I think that's probably the thing. Did I talk about the BOSS theory, the buffering oxidative stress system theory?
I think did
in the mitochondria?
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay, so that's kind of the latest thing in my mind, which is knowing that this molecule gets into the mitochondria, right? Peer-reviewed, published research shows that, and knowing that it can act like a paddy wagon, right, and hold on to reactive oxygen species. Right. I think that's one of the key things. I share regularly that we literally have testimonials from head to toe. Might as well throw out our kind of FDA disclaimer. The FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. But usually when I share testimonials, I just say, assume this won't happen for you. That's not, I'm not sharing it to kind of entice you to take the product. You can look at the research and make your decision there. So from head to toe, we've got, hair growing faster. My favorite toe testimonial is a guy in our circle. When he was 5 years old, a crab bit his big toe and split his toenail. That toenail was split from 5 years old until 65 years old. And after he started taking our product, the toe has now become unsplit, has healed. Toenail, not toe, but toenail. Very specifically. So we literally have testimonials from head to toe, and it's really the BOSS theory, this buffering oxidative stress system, that is where we think it's driving. Because in reality, mitochondria, there's I used to say 50 to 5,000 mitochondria in every cell, and then I started doing a little bit of research into neurons. There's 2 million mitochondria in neurons, right? So I don't know where this number, I got it from some paper, 50 to 5,000. Maybe that's on aggregate, right? But there's 2 million mitochondria in every nerve, right? In every brain cell and every nerve in your body. And so if you can improve or reduce the negative byproducts of the mitochondria, then yeah, you're going to get, positive testimonials from head to toe.
Well, it's like, for our listeners, Oxidative stress is the killer, man. Everybody's walking around and just oxidating. I mean, Nick, that's all we see all day. We're just people that come in feeling sick. That's what we're fighting, right?
Yep.
Some of these people are just lit up. And to have something like what Chris is talking about that you can just take daily that goes in and wipes a bunch of that and just helps your body, the innate intelligence, just function the way it's already designed to function and removes that interference. I always like to give the analogy, it's like static, right? Like when we have that reactive oxygen species, it's like there's this static amongst the communication systems of the body. And the moment we can reduce that and knock that out, the body comes through clear with that communication and everything, kind of like a clear radio channel, right? And this is so important for people because we live, this day and age, the environment that we're in, just with modern day, we're almost, unless you're like running things through your filter, which not everybody's doing, everybody's oxidized, man. And it's funny because I had a patient tell me about a friend she had who is a nurse, and she was talking to him and talking about just diet, right? And so she's telling him, well, you do know that like what you're putting in your body has an effect on your health. And he's like, well, my body filters everything. And she kind of looks at him and she says, well, do you think that maybe you need to filter some things before they get to your body's filters? And like he looked at her, she told me he looked at her for like this long stare and said, no one's ever put it that way. I've never even thought of it like that. Right. But I mean, I see this, Chris, is like, it's like this thing you can put in your system daily that helps you just like turn all that shit off and like really just put another filter in that is very, very powerful. That's just going to give you another layer there.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And you're talking about what you put in your body. One of the things that came out of the summit, right? So I got to interview 55 people and we can talk about some of the specifics, but 55 experts in longevity is the important role of not just nutrition, right? Because it's nutrition. Dr. Gundry, I got to, his book has been released now, but I got to get a hold of his book, Gut Check, before it was released. And so my interview with him was about his new book, where he mentions leaky gut 102 times, right? So he's talking about leaky gut, leaky gut, leaky gut. In fact, one of my questions was like, all right, Dr. Gundry, you say leaky gut equals leaky brain. Leaky gut equals leaky bones. Leaky gut equals leaky heart. Okay, we get it. Leaky gut is bad. Like, so what do we do about it? He shared that 100% of the people who come to see him, and he still sees patients 6 days a week. Like the guy is just a beast, right? And is publishing books. He's published 4 New York Times bestsellers. He sees patients 6 days a week, and he says 100% of the patients that he sees have antibodies in their system to wheat, right? So not just gluten, right? Everybody thinks about gluten. And I think this was one of the surprises for me is like, we all are aware that we should not be consuming food that we're allergic to, right? Like that makes perfect sense. If I get a rash, if I get swelling, whatever, like, let's not eat that anymore. Your body's giving you a severe reaction to tell you not to eat it anymore. But a lot of the conversations were actually about food sensitivities, about how, as in this example. So these people who have wheat antibodies in their bloodstream, what that really means, right, is proteins that weren't supposed to get through the stomach lining into the bloodstream. Your body sees them and is now creating antibodies to fight these foreign invaders. And it turns out that plants, for their own chemical protection, have designed these proteins to look very similar to a lot of our own internal components. And that is the origin, if you talk to Dr. Tom O'Brien, that is the origin of autoimmune disease, right? Where your body starts attacking these proteins, but those proteins look similar to, and he talks about kind of the weakest link. If it's your heart, if it's your liver, if it's your skin, psoriasis, all of these things are what are manifested out of this kind of leaky gut. And so I think understanding your food sensitivities, in fact, I've already, one of the guys I interviewed was talking about your genetic proclivities when it comes to foods, right? So genetically, are you better with carbs? Are you better with protein? Are you better with fats? Like that seems like something that would be useful to know. So, this obviously, I got homework from every interview, right? Like I did an hour of research going into the interview, at least, for people with more content like Greenfield, Asprey, and Gundry, I did 3 hours of research and dug in, and then about a full hour interview with them. So every time I got more homework. So in this particular case, yeah, I want to know what my proclivities are from a genetic basis. And then I'm going to turn around and go, okay, well, what are my sensitivities? Because maybe they're not in line. Since the summit, somebody mentioned to me that you should try not to eat the same food at 4 days. I haven't found the perfect way to describe this, but if you have something on day 1, don't have that thing again until day 5, right? Which makes sense, because what I think tends to happen is the things that you're sensitive to are the things that you eat all the time. And I can tell you right now, I'm kind of on a high protein messing around with my diet, and I'm eating the same thing basically every day. And it would not surprise me if I have some sort of sensitivities to turkey, because I'm eating turkey 2 big meals a day. And so the concept of breaking that up every 4 days, I'm working on some of these things. I have to kind of get a game plan and psych myself up and then make it happen. I actually have to get my mindset right, which is one of the interesting things that came out of the summit.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, we talk about food sensitivity so often with our patients, and I always say too, it's it's a delayed hypersensitivity reaction, meaning you can have that reaction the moment after you eat it up to 5 to 7 days later. And so, yeah, the repetition of certain foods in your diet can play a tremendous role in dysregulating your immune function and, therefore your inflammatory function. You kind of corrected me at the beginning when I was like, hey, the second half of your life, and you kind of said that, well, what about the next 2/3 of your life?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because I think, when people hear 2/3 more, I thought I was halfway done. Tell us why you have that perspective.
Yeah, and there's some fascinating stuff that ended up coming out of the longevity summit. We're in this quantum shift. The medical community, you look at what David Sinclair is saying, he's the biggest proponent, and people might try and burn him at the stake because he's saying, hey, he thinks we can live forever. I'm actually in that camp. Not today, not with the information that we have today, but I don't think it's going to take long for us to be able to live forever. If you just think, so here's some fascinating stuff. I interviewed 55 longevity experts. These are people who are thinking about a much longer, healthier span, right? That's their focus, and they're on board, and they hey, yeah, I want to be a speaker because I've got something to add to this subject. Every one of them, I asked a number of questions. 2 questions were, how old do you want to live to, right? How long are you planning on living? And how old can humans live to? Only 3 of the 55 gave the same number, right? So think about the implication of that. If you believe 120 is a number that came up often because, you have Jean Clement who she lived to 122, right? Ostensibly, whatever records are available, that kind of debate. But so if we say it's 120, why isn't your goal 120? And the reason is the same reason that, when I tell people about the original study where the test subjects live 90% longer than the control group, it's kind of funny. I get 2 reactions. One of them, if they're New Yorkers, they're like, why would we want rats to live longer? Chris, you need to bury this research and you are actually an evil person. But the other one, and there's really kind of 2 questions, but the other one is, why would I want to live longer? And at first, I was kind of perplexed. I've always wanted to live to 125. The same reason, there was a Lamborghini on my wall. Probably, I'm like, well, it'd be better to enjoy that for 125 years, not just 80 years, right? So I don't know where that number came from. But when you stop and think, okay, if you change the question and you're like, hey, if you have the same mental and physical capacity that you have today, would you then be interested in living longer, right? And that's kind of what this longevity summit is supposed to be, a collection of people who have that mindset. And still, only 3 gave the same number. So even in this expert level, the longevity experts, they can't extricate living longer from living infirmed and in a debilitated state. And so I think that's telling about where we sit today. Now, just to throw another kind of data point, which is just knock your socks off. In 1950, medical information doubled every 50 years. Today, it doubles every 73 days.
That's incredible.
Like it's just nuts. And think about this. That doesn't even include AI, because that's a recent number. Like AI hasn't really had its impact into medicine yet, right? Like they're starting to use it, and there's probably a couple pieces that have used it, but we're doubling medical information every 73 days. Ironically, I used AI to do a quick little calculation. In 10 years on the same slope, the same asymptotic slope, we'll be doubling information every 15 minutes. So if there is something that is possible in the realm of medicine, right, in the realm of our biology, it's going to happen so much faster than you think. And I love David Sinclair's argument that we can take any cell from your body, right, and we can make a baby you, right? We can clone that off of that cell, we can clone it and make a baby you. So all the information necessary between your current age and your baby age, right, and age 0 is available in every cell in your body. And that's what Dr. David Sinclair is doing in his labs. He's actually talked, I saw a recent video. He was talking about how they've taken rats and I think they've done some genetic manipulation, and now they're back to a younger age, and then they age out again, and then they take them back again, right? So it's kind of like, here's your medicine, whatever that is, if it's CRISPR technology, if it's, advanced sirtuin modifications, but they actually rolled back the mouses. I'm pretty sure it's mice, not rats. Mice's life twice. So wow. These things, again, if you think it's possible, it's going to happen a lot faster than you realize.
That's incredible. I mean, there's a part of me that goes, especially with this concept of AI, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, it goes like, I don't really want to be half like hybrid machine. You know what I mean? And yep. And I know there's futurists like Ray Kurzweil, and I don't know if Ray Dalio is also in that category, that they talk about this concept of what's called the one. It's
the cyborg.
Yeah, well, there's sort of a term for it. It's like we're this mergence of man and machine. And how many conversations did you have where they talked about that sort of reality versus like a biochemical one, like the one that David Sinclair is referring to, where you can actually, whether it be NAD or substitutes of NAD or things like that he's doing in his research that are actually reversing and regenerating tissue.
So I think a lot of what you're talking about, right? So we often think about the human body as a vehicle, right? Like a car. And they're like, at some point you got to change the oil. At some point the alternator is going to go bad. At some point, and that's certainly discussed. I didn't really have any people to talk about that, although I did have some fascinating kind of rabbit hole research about stem cells. Okay, just a segue on this. So they took the heart of, we'll go with a rat. It was a rat or a mouse. They dissolved all the muscle tissue off of the heart. So you just had this kind of collagen structure, this structure around it. They dripped stem cells on it. Those stem cells figured out that they needed to turn into heart muscles, like specifically heart muscle cells, and started beating, right? So from just the framework to that, and kind of the takeaway is, we're going to be able to print the scaffolding, put your stem cells on the scaffolding, and make you a new heart, your own heart, right? Because it's from your own stem cells. Like these are technologies that are coming. Now, I didn't have any particular conversation that advanced in terms of the replacement piece. Most of my conversations were about, how do I optimize this? I had actually my co-author, Dr. Jerome Corsi. So that's a fascinating story in and of itself. My co-author is a 2-time New York Times #1 bestseller, right? So to just get on New York Times bestseller is a Herculean task. He was, and then it's asymptotically hard. It's like, hey, I played amateur soccer, which I played semi-professional soccer, and then real soccer player, like actual professional soccer players. It's night and day. Same with getting on to position #1, and he's done it twice. He's written books. I don't know, his book collection is probably in the 30s, but he's written books about politics. He's written books about ecology. He's written books about economy. And so I brought him on to really just do some I don't know, soul searching, some deep thoughts on what's going to happen if we live longer. Like, is this a good or bad thing? What is like, and David Sinclair does a pretty good job in his book talking about this. And I think if you talk to some people like Elon Musk's, one of the soapboxes that he's on currently is we need more kids. We're going to run out of people, right? There's a population decline. Well, actually having people live longer, actually a lot longer, can help to solve that. And you start to get a more aware population, right? A population with experience that can actually add value to the current society when they can live a lot longer. And so we had those kind of conversations. I spoke with a gerontologist, Dr. Paul Nash, which was just fascinating. Like, what are the preconceived notions we have about people who are older, about how old, like, what are their actions, and, you know, what is age appropriate? So his tip, I asked everyone for 2 to 3 tips about longevity. And his tip was everything is age appropriate. So whatever age you are, if you want to, whatever, go skateboarding, go. Like, if you're in your 90s, and go skateboarding, like, do these things that you actually want to do. Everything is age appropriate. And I think that's a really good message, especially as we're going to continue to live longer.
What an incredible concept. I mean, I can't help but think my grandpa, he never learned to ski, and he passed away at 99 eventually. But he learned to ski, I think he was 92, 93, drove up to the ski mountain by himself, took the lessons, rented the gear. And we actually have a cabin on a ski hill. Like, we could have taken him up, but he wanted to do it on his own. You know, so I think about, you know, people like him who just, you know, have this insatiable desire. For whatever reason, he wanted to learn how to ski, and so he went off and did it. Like, I love that kind of mindset that, you know, we may do it slightly differently as we age or what have you. And I know that Dr. Peter Attia talks about this stuff too, about your marginal decade. Like, what do you want to be doing 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now? How do you prepare your body now for those kinds of, you know, circumstances where you can, you know, perform or try new things, you know, and whatnot. So I love that. I love the conversation. I also love the conversation around, you know, hopefully while we're spending our time here on this planet, we're doing innovative things. We're diving into our curiosity. We're learning more about ourselves, so we can offer more value and legacy to the generations that follow, as opposed to just taking up space, which I think a lot of people do think like that. I'm just going to be an old folks home, and my life is going downhill as fast as possible. I'll probably play bridge most of my days, and probably not move and sit in my rocker. You know, I think that we've just been so programmed to think that we live out our lives, maybe the last 10 to 15 years, in a really debilitated kind of way. And so I understand why people say, yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah. Right. I think back to, you know, my mom. So I'm training regularly, like 5-6 days a week. I'm eating healthy. I'm doing the right things regularly. And I'll talk to my mom about it. And she's like, well, what are you trying? Well, one, I want a 6-pack. I haven't had a 6-pack in my life. Well, why do you want that? Like, you're 54. And I'm like, that's a difference between you and me, right? Like, because I don't see that as a reason not to pursue that goal. And so there really is a generational, well, I mean, let's be realistic. In the longevity summit, even the longevity experts aren't separating, you know, living infirmed and in a debilitated state from getting older. But I'm certainly changing, and my mindset is very different, right? My mindset is, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to do it so that I can keep having an active and exciting life? And man, your grandfather as an example, that's amazing, right? Like, we need more of that. Like, we probably need a special series about kind of what amazing things are old people doing. So we're like, oh, wow, I can do that. And it is inspirational to see, like, marathoners in their 90s and even late 90s. Like, those are inspirational things that we need to see more of, because that sets the aspiration. If I can, I saw a video, you know, on social media the other day. A guy was interviewing, hey, I interview people who are in shape to find out what they do. The dude was just ripped and 69 years old, out on, like, Venice Beach or something. And they're like, okay, I can do that. Right? Like, that is absolutely achievable. And why wouldn't you do that? Well, maybe that's not your thing, and that's okay. But, like, if it is your thing, go do it.
Yeah, there's a great video of RFK Jr. actually doing a push-up competition, and he had his shirt off, and it's like possible future president looking jacked. You know, I mean, That's inspiring. It's
Yeah.
so inspiring. And why not shoot for a six pack if you've never had one, or perfect those chin ups that you haven't ever been able to do, or whatever
Muscle
it might
ups.
be.
That's the goal, right?
There you
Muscle
go.
ups.
David, go ahead.
Well, no, as you guys were talking just last week, somebody was telling me they saw a video of some like 92-year-old woman doing CrossFit, and she's doing like Olympic lifting and stuff. And it's just to what you guys are talking about. Like some people, that mindset, they put a damper on just because I get older, I can't, right? And I think the biggest piece of longevity is the mindset of I can and I will continue to do. And I feel, like I've given my parents a really hard time about this and told them, like, you guys are aging yourselves. Like, it's almost like you feel like just because you're at this stage in your life that these are the types of things that are happening. I was like, and it's not. You're creating that reality, and you find that very interesting, right? Why people just fall into that. And a lot of it's just learned behavior. So.
Yeah, no, it totally is. And it's interesting, I think, too, when you get a chance to pick the brains of all these different experts like you have, Chris, you're hearing things from different angles, different expertise, and just different mindsets. So I'm curious, like, maybe what are some of the biggest surprises or things that you learn from some of these experts that maybe like, oh, I never thought of that. Like you mentioned one, even with this concept of diet variation, try not to do the same thing every day. What are some other little surprises like that you feel are important for people to know about?
Well, I do think one of the surprises was, in fact, that even longevity experts aren't separating, living infirmed and debilitated from actually, living longer, living chronologically longer. I think that's really important. I was looking for, going into it, you're like, hey, I'm going to have an interview with like one person and they're going to give me the silver bullet. And then all I got to do is that thing. Didn't find it. Like that thing doesn't really exist. And I interviewed people about kind of cutting edge technologies. I didn't get anybody with a biocharger, but we talked about hyperbaric chambers. We talked about cold plunging, which was really big and popular right now, right? Like how long and how should you feel after to kind of be doing it right? We talked about, one of the best technologies is sauna, right? Sauna 3+ times a week, 20 minutes will show a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality. Holy smokes, right? Like go buy a sauna if you want to live longer. And if you're worried about affording it, if you have a sauna, you'll live longer enough to pay it off. Like,
that's a great perspective,
right? It's a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality.
Yeah.
But what should you be doing? Like, how hot should it be? How long should you be in there? So we talked about like, well, you should be sweating a gallon of sweat while you're in there. You should actually feel exhausted when you get out. You should raise your core body temperature 1 to 2 degrees. Like these are really specifics about where you're going to get these benefits. So no kind of magic bullet. Oh, all I got to do is that thing and then I'm good, right? We're kind of hoping one day there'll be a David Sinclair pill and that'll be the one thing. So that didn't exist. But in terms of the downside, right? So what are the limiting factors? What are things actually holding us back from living longer? One of them that really did surprise me, I had 2 conversations with stem cell experts. They have very different perspectives on stem cells. So one of them is Dr. Joy Kong. She does stem cell injections. She's out of California. And so they kind of pull the stem cells out of you, grow them, and inject them back in, right? So that's one perspective. The other actually is Christian Drapeau. I've got his book here, right here, Cracking the Stem Cell Code. His focus is on a supplement and a collection of the herbs and really kind of he scoured the earth to find the things that tended to help people, right? So what this tribe in some remote area, what do you give people when they're not feeling well? That tends to work for almost everything. Well, let's dig into that. And he comes to the understanding, well, that's actually helping your body or causing your body to release stem cells. Stem cells, of course, the healing mechanism of our body. A lot of people think about, okay, yeah, I slough off skin all the time. So that's getting replenished. But they don't think about, as an example, your muscles, every cell of your muscles is replenished about every 3 months, right? So what's replenishing those? Well, it's stem cells. So if you have a supplement that can release those stem cells easily, then you end up being able to heal faster. It can actually carry on. One of the things that came out of the conversation was stem cells come from your red marrow. Your red marrow shrinks with age. And so if that shrinks to the point that it's no longer producing stem cells, this is almost like it's the finish line, but the wrong finish line, the one you don't want to cross, right? And so that is something that I think we're going to have to solve. That is something that we're going to have to address. Now, it could be as simple as Dr. Kong's version, which is get some stem cells out of your body, have this ongoing stem cell line, and maybe we're doing, some sort of dialysis type treatment on a regular basis, or we figure out how to make sure that the marrow doesn't shrink to the point that it's no longer producing stem cells. So I felt that as kind of a surprise. I wasn't really looking for like the gotcha, but that feels like a kind of gotcha in the longevity context.
Yeah, and I think like, you kind of alluded to this earlier. It's more time on this planet, the better questions we start to ask, and the more realizations that we come to know. I know Dave Asprey talks about that often, just with regards to, I'm betting that we're going to get smarter as more time goes on. And you talked about the doubling of intellectual property, essentially, when it comes to every, what did you say, every like,
it's every 73 days, medical information doubles.
Like, that's incredible. And just, thinking the trajectory of that and what's possible. I mean, something as simple as NAD that we didn't really know a whole lot about, 5-10 years ago and now it seems like most people know about it. People come to my clinic now asking, hey, can I get an NAD IV? And I'm like, how do you know about this? Because it's starting to proliferate, podcasts like this, or Joe Rogan, or some of these other, bigger names that have huge platforms. People are starting to self-educate. And that's something I think is fascinating. The people are now, for whatever reason, or maybe there's many reasons as of late, the people are starting to actually ask questions about their own health. And I think there's just a general curiosity that seems to be there that maybe wasn't there so much, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, especially if you just think of, the understanding that aging is inevitable, that you really know if there's nothing you can do about it, then why am I passing on the cake every night? Right? Like if I'm just going to age out, the cake is delicious. Like I have a sweet tooth. I really like cake. What I do now is actually have a small square of dark chocolate and a small square of milk chocolate. And that's like this wall between me and, we'll call it cake disaster. Like, hey, I've got my dessert and we're good. But yeah, I think a lot of that is related to the mindset that, we're going to live longer. Another thing that I'll share that was really good that came out of this summit. I asked every expert, I said, give me 2 to 3 protocols, mindsets, habits, let's call them shortcuts, because everybody likes shortcuts, for longevity that you would share, and longevity and a long health span. And so then we aggregated all the data. I think there was one, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Dr. Tom O'Brien gave us the bad news that there is no shortcut. That you have to, there are things that you have to do. Damn.
Yeah.
I should have kicked him off immediately. There's no shortcuts. What do you need to be on another longevity summit where they're more realist. But we aggregated all the data, and 33% of the experts mentioned sleep, 52 mentioned exercise and diet, and then 46 mentioned mindset. And my first thought was 33 sleep, 64% mentioned mindset. I think they got it wrong, because sleep is so important, right? I'm sure that's something you guys address. Like, oh yeah, how is your sleep? Great. Yeah. 5 hours isn't enough. Really? No, it is not. I'm sure you address that all the time. We know sleep is good for our mental, physical, and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking more about it, and through kind of other conversations, and frankly, going back and listening to a lot of the talks. So I'm going back and listening to all of them, right? Because I'm in the middle interviewing, so I'm trying to put together good questions and provide guidance. And so in some cases, missing some of the details. And I actually changed my mind. I actually do think that they got it wrong. I think mindset should have been higher, right? Because you've got patients who come in and they're like, you need to fix your sleep. And if they don't want to fix their sleep, right? If they don't want to get to bed sooner, or they don't want to stay in bed later, or they don't want to drop their phones earlier or stop drinking right before they, like if they don't want to do those things, they've got the wrong mindset. Mindset's actually more important. Then you go to exercise. And I actually really think there's a lot of value in separating exercise from movement, right? And I haven't broken out the data yet, but to separate exercise from movement, because I think there's some, and you actually see patients, you probably have a better picture of this. Some exercise is probably just even a daunting word, right? Like how am I going to go from this, whatever this is, to someone who exercises? Screw that. Just go for a movement. And if the movement is a 5-minute walk a day, do that, right? Hopefully you'll build up later. But if the thought of having to build up later stops you from the 5 minutes, never plan on going beyond 5 minutes. And by the way, it's more valuable to do 5 minutes every day than it is to do 35 minutes once a week. Like there's more value in getting your blood moving every day. So movement, I think, but if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to make that change. And finally, diet, right? If you start, I think a lot of people are afraid to figure out their food sensitivities.
Oh, for sure. There's a responsibility there once you find out. Yeah.
Right. And like, so you probably kind of know it because you don't feel the best after you eat that certain thing, whatever it is that you really enjoy. Or maybe you don't know it and you're just like, if I do a food sensitivity test, you're right. The responsibility is I might have to never have something I absolutely love again. I love this story Dr. Gundry told in the summit. And he's like, I have a high-level social media guy who came to me achy, like problematic. And like I mentioned, everyone had wheat antibodies, actually, not just sensitivities, wheat antibodies. And he did all the tests and he's like, hey, you're going to have to cut out wheat. You're going to cut out eggs. And the social media guy was like, well, I can't cut out eggs. I eat an omelet every day for breakfast. And Dr. Gunner was like, well, you're right. You don't have to cut out the omelet, right? But if you're the one who's hurting, so if you want to stop hurting, you need to make this change. So he makes the change. A number of months later, he's like, Dr. Gundry, like, can we test for eggs again? Because I want to have an omelet. And they test, and Dr. Gundry's like, all right, you can have egg white omelets. All right, so no yolks. And 4 days later, he calls and he's like, Dr. Gundry, I'm in a lot of pain. And Dr. Gundry, in his voice, is awesome in the video. He's like, what did you do? and he's like, well, 3 days ago, I had an egg white omelet for breakfast, and then I had an egg white omelet for lunch, and then I had an egg white omelet for dinner, and then same thing the next day. And I share that story because you might be afraid that you're going to have to drop eggs. You're probably like, there are some things that you may have to drop that you can't have as regularly as you like, but you can have them. Like if that guy had just eaten one egg white omelet every other day, he probably would have been fine. Or maybe it's every 5th day, right? From that kind of example of, hey, don't have the same food every 4 days. So I think that's important to note, that you might have to sacrifice in the short term, and you might not be able to get back to as frequently as you are, but don't let the fear of you never having something again stop you from finding out, maybe what you're sensitive to and what would be of value for you to reduce in your life.
That's amazing. I mean, I can't help but think that, when you break down some of the really big heavy hitters that make a tremendous impact on longevity, but just also quality of life, it's things that, relatively speaking, they're not extra cost to you. Like it could be fasting, it could be hot and cold therapy, it could be like a change in our mindset and just the changing from that idea of exercise into movement. And maybe eating a little bit differently, which will probably save you some money because you're not going to be eating out as much and maybe not drinking as much alcohol. And all of these things are just going to put money more actually back in your pocket. You're not spending money on prescription medications and doctor visits and all that other stuff. I mean, it seems in the world that we live in, simplicity really wins here.
Yeah.
And you must have got a lot of that theme, when you talk to these experts.
Well, yeah. So you talk to like a Ben Greenfield and ask about his recovery room, right? So he talked about his 6 principles, and one of them's a recovery room, and he's got a hyperbaric chamber in there, and then he's probably got the bio charger in there, and all those things. You're like, that's a little out of reach.
Yeah.
In his, to defend Ben Greenfield, he's like, hey, like this is probably not fair because it's not what everybody has access to, but it is my favorite device, right? Like that is his favorite thing. even when it comes to food sensitivities, right? Like, there's money spent on food sensitivity tests, but you could do, so I interviewed, her name just slipped my mind, Indira. She was her expertise is rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease, right?
Yeah.
And she talked about the AIP diet. It's really the autoimmune protocol where you go to a low inflammatory diet, right? So you're cutting out some things. And I actually finally looked at the list, and there's a lot of really good, delicious stuff that are still on a low inflammatory diet.
Oh yeah,
right?
you bet. Yeah.
It's not like, hey, you can't have anything like, in my mind, I was like, it's got to be bone broth. like you got to go back to a bone broth diet. No, it's not that restrictive. There's lots of things, but you get to that diet and you maintain it for a certain number of weeks, and then you start incorporating those things that are known to be generally more inflammatory, and you have those in your diet for 3 days, and then you're like, check, like, how does it feel? Do you feel bloated? Do you feel less energy, more energy, whatever? And so that's absolutely free, right? There's no, you don't have to go do a food sensitivity test. You just need to have some structure, get to this low inflammatory diet, and then start incorporating things afterwards.
Yeah, self-awareness, and taking the power back and not just asking the doctor for all the answers, and starting to become your own, like we like to say, like, become your own scientist, become your own doctor for yourself, and listen to your body. Those are powerful messages. Chris, I mean, you got obviously so much wisdom with your own product and all the scientific journey that you went on. And I love that you shared on this podcast, how you got into product development and what was driving you. Just as we close here, we're going to definitely share how people are going to access the summit, the book and whatnot. But what's your hope for this summit? Like, what do you want this message to be for the world as you deliver the summit and book?
Yeah, so I like what Dr. David Sinclair is focused on. I like what even Mark Hyman's new book, what they're focused on is really long. I call it longevity revolution, but dramatically changing the mindset about longevity and what it means to get older. Let's just say we take the fact that medical information is doubling so quickly now, and we just say, you know what, we've got the current technologies today. If you look at what it takes to be healthier. And by the way, one of the answers to my mom is, I feel better, right? It's not just that I want a six pack. I'm also, everything I'm doing, I feel better. I'm jogging a couple times a week. I'm biking a couple times a week. I'm doing some heavy weights, some HIIT training. Like, I'm doing these. I enjoy doing these things. It feels really good. And not always during them, right? Like, HIIT training is not necessarily pleasant. But I do have a background like in sports, and so I actually do really enjoy it. But even if you don't, okay, yeah, so that's 20, 30 minutes. You really shouldn't do more than 40 of where you're not exactly happy. But the feeling for the rest of the day, it just feels better. So I think you want to go for that feeling. But what they're angling for is this mind shift. We've got to be thinking about aging as a disease instead of as an inevitability, right? Yeah. Chronologically, we are going to age, right? But from a debilitated state, from living infirmed, no, like, that doesn't have to happen. There are people who, I think the best example that analogy for how most people would like to live is like a candle, right? You light the candle and it burns, and it burns bright, and the flame is basically the same. There's some flickering, whatever, tough times in your life or whatever. And then you get to the end. And if we don't get to living forever, I'd rather live like a candle. So at the very end, right, that last 1/10%, hey, it's a little rough, and then the flame goes out. I think that's what most people would like to have. And I think worst case scenario, we need to be working for that. Best case scenario, so worst case scenario, it's the standard candle. It's approximately 80 years, and you go out. Best case scenario, not best case, next scenario is the candle's a lot longer than you currently envision it to be, and you still burn bright through that whole period. And then the best case scenario is your flame doesn't go out, right? It doesn't go out because of natural causes. I do think that at some point there will be some person who is the last person to die of natural causes. and it will suck to be, I mean, they won't know, right? But it would suck to be that person. I'd rather be the person right after them, right? Like, you get across the line, I'm going to stay on this side of the line. In order to work for that, in order to take advantage of the fact that medical information is doubling so rapidly, like, be healthy now so you can get into that. And there's a concept called the terminal velocity of aging, where from that point, when we reach that point, no one further dies from natural causes. And I think that's what I would like to share.
That's amazing. What a beautiful metaphor too, with the candle. I think people can really wrap their heads around that. I don't think anyone wants to suffer for, a decade or decade and a half in the last.
The number's 20%, right? So number that I read is
wow.
20% of your life is in some sort of decline typically. But that's not always true, right? You talk your grandfather went skiing 23 or 20, 92 or 93?
Yeah, right? Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So he wasn't suffering for all that time. I mean, he probably had some aches and pains, but whatever. He went out skiing. He didn't go out skiing. He learned how to ski.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's amazing. So it's not an inevitability even today that the last 20% needs to be in some sort of debilitated state.
Love that. Such an important message, and I think a great one to close on. So, as we move forward, when is the Longevity Summit launching? When is it being released, and how do people keep their eyes and ears on it?
Yeah, so the Longevity Summit actually starts next Monday. So it's Monday the 26th from when we're recording this, obviously. Monday, February 26th through March 3rd. And it's free. Like, you just need to give your name and your email. You can attend. The format is we release 7 to 8 videos each day for the week. And you can watch any one of those videos at any point during that day. If you miss a day or there's a video you want access, I'm going back and listening to those. I was the interviewer, and I'm like picking up nuggets again on the second time. If you want access, it's like $99 for, unfettered access to all the videos. So that's next week. We're going to have a link in the show notes for that particular video. For the summit. And it's called the Uncovering the Secrets of Longevity, Live Beyond the Norms. And then if anybody's interested in trying the product or getting a hold of the book, my recommendation is you go to MyVitalC.com / and we got a link for your audience / Dr. Dads, right? Dr. Dads, Dr. Dads. When you go there, we have 3 oils. We've got the ESS 60 molecule, right? The soccer ball shaped molecule, in olive oil, in avocado oil, and in MCT oil. We always recommend the olive oil for 2 reasons. The first is we're a science-based organization, and all the research is in the ESS 60 molecule in olive oil. And then the second is we can actually get more of that ESS 60 molecule into olive oil. So go for the olive oil. There is a 25% discount if you go on subscription. You can, of course, cancel that subscription at any time. Do not worry. Our customer service department has like 850 5-star reviews. They're not trained to talk you out of canceling your service. Just take advantage of that discount. And there is a coupon code for $15 off, and that's also Dr. Dads, Dr. Dads, Dr. Dads. We'll get them that additional 15% off. And I want to share one more thing. I'm really proud of this kind of charity aspect. You can find the book at livelongerandbetterbook.com or even on our website. It's on Amazon, so you can find it there. But if you buy it from our website, it's like $20, Amazon or our website. For $10 extra, I'll sign it. And for $15, my co-author, Dr. Jerome Corsi, and I will both sign it. 100% of the signature fee goes to a charity, and the charity is OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. You guys may remember the movie Sound of Freedom, which addresses childhood sex trafficking and really sex trafficking in general. I saw him speak at an event a while ago, just blew me away. The movie came out. So 100% of the signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad.
That's amazing. Yeah, and what an important cause to be supporting. That's amazing, Chris. Thank you so much, Chris, for showing up today. Just for those of you listening, if you didn't hear David's voice, speaking of longevity, he forgot his cord, and so his battery in his computer died out on us, which is why he bounced. But yeah, we're gonna have all that in the show notes for you, and we'll get this podcast launched and released just in time for you guys to listen and then tune into the upcoming Longevity Summit. So Chris, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and well, I would love to reach out and see how everything went with the launch and to hear how things went afterwards.
Yeah, I'd love to connect again. Get you some. I think I may have sent you some product before.
It was incredible. I loved it. I loved it, and the flavor too. Like, you guys, if you haven't tried this, you have to try it, because in the oil base, there's something about it. It's almost like it was a dressing, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's
definitely a high quality extra virgin olive oil. So thank you, Nick and David, wherever he may be. Thank you guys for having me back.
Yeah, good to see you again. Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the Dr. Dads and share with your family and friends. You can also follow and interact with Dr. Nick and Dr. David on Facebook and Instagram for a daily dose of inspiration and the latest in health and wellness. Be well.